Sunshine at the Nürburgring. It's a rarity this weekend, but we do have sunshine for the first race of our McLaren Trophy Europe from the Nürburgring, Germany, and a very exciting place to going racing. It is going to be a massive challenge for the drivers because just a few seconds ago, as we were queuing to get into the commentary box, it was raining. As you can see, humidity down to 68% now, track temperature at 21 degrees. But our AM drivers who will be starting this McLaren Trophy race really will have no idea what tyres to go on and how to approach the challenges of this Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. My name is Ben Costanjuris. Alongside me is driving standards official for the McLaren Trophy, Tommy Erdos. And Tommy, this is, well, it's been a challenge all year, hasn't it, for the drivers?
Absolutely, great to be here with you, Ben, and here at Nürburgring, which, as you say, obviously quite often wet and dry. But yes, it's been a fantastic opening 2 rounds for the series. Great racing on all classes, and yeah, looking forward to the challenge that Nürburgring proposes.
It's a brand new championship for 2023. We visited Paul Ricard and Spa-Francorchamps, 2 legendary circuits, both with wet challenges, remarkably. You wouldn't expect it from Paul Ricard at the start of June, but you did have a wet practice session and a wet race. And then Spa, unfortunately, losing one of the races as well through to the challenging conditions. And so for these drivers that are mainly either first or second year into competitive motorsport, it's been a real baptism of fire.
Absolutely, they'll certainly be getting plenty of wet driving, but then, you know, if you want to race in Europe, that's what's going to happen. And but it's they're really very ably backed by their pro drivers who are, you know, telling them the tricks of the trade. And luckily, they've had some wet running here, obviously through practice, so they understand the circuit. Of course, as you said a few moments ago, we had a little shower, so I'm assuming these cars are going on the grid now on slicks at the moment. The thing to watch out for is that the 2 classes have very different wheel fixments, meaning the Artura still runs with 5 wheel nuts, but the 570S only has 1 center wheel nut. So it'll be very interesting if these guys have to pit mid-race to change tires. Something
that we've seen in GT4 series where you've got the 5 studs will take around 4.5 to 5 minutes to get all 4 wheels off and get new set of tyres on. So not necessarily an option for those teams unless they really see that there's the potential for that amount of benefit. And in the GT4 race at Paul Ricard, we saw half the race run in wet conditions where wet tyres would have been good had you not had to pit.
No, absolutely. I think it'd be a very interesting scenario if it does happen and they have to do that. Now, the 570S was probably one of the, if not the last GT4 cars to be homologated with 1 center wheel nut. So, of course, there's an advantage there on the 570S, which is the slower class of the 2. But that will certainly mean that if they have to pit in to change wheels, you could see the 570s getting in the mix with the Arturas towards the end of the race. So it'll be an interesting scenario to watch for.
Looking at our front row with SMC Motorsport of Gonzalo de Andres and Thomas Pintos, alongside Mohamed Al Khalifa and Charlie Hollings. It'll be Mohamed Al Khalifa who will start the Inari Motorsport machine. And this is row 2 then. Thomas Sargent and Michael O'Brien taking the second stint in that car.
Yes, of course, Hopton and Hankey should have been second there, but grid penalty put him into 5th position. That's obviously promoted Khalifa to P2, so I'm sure the Inari car is very happy about that.
Let's go down to Gemma Scott, who is on the grid. And we've just seen that Tommy Pintos has the pole position. He'll be jumping into the car after Gonzalo de Andres. Let's go down and hear from him now.
Tommy, you just said to me, you guys like this place. It's your 4th pole this season. Gonzalez has qualified each time fantastically.
Well, he had done a perfect job every qualified. I think he likes this place a lot because all the time he's getting the fast lap, so it's very good for us, trying to get a good pace into every race, and it's a very advantage point at the end of the race and every point of it, because getting this position is pretty good. You're behind, you're above everyone. In the first corner, you are the one who get the less meters into it, and you get the perfect place to get it, so it's amazing.
And of course, today's race is going to be interesting. We've just had a rain shower. The air temperature's dropped quite a lot, and it looks like we might get some more rain throughout.
Well, let's see how it looks. We got some dark clouds here, so it seems to be going to rain in some sectors. Maybe we could go a race with the first and third sector in dry and the second one in wet. So it seems to be good. It's going to be a fun race.
It definitely is, and I wish you the best. Thanks a lot, Tommy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A huge job for these drivers, these professional drivers, not just in terms of what happens in this particular race, but all the work they do in the paddock with their gentleman drivers to try and get them up to speed. It's as much being fast on track as being able to translate what you need for the gentleman drivers to know off.
Yes, absolutely, Ben. This is the great thing about this series, that the bronze drivers have some of the best guys to teach them the ropes, basically. These are very, very professional guys. They're quick, obviously, as they drive, but they've spent all of their careers teaching people how to drive. So, you know, this is really an ideal situation for them.
It's interesting to see them all wandering around with their laptops and bits of paper in the paddock. It is not just a simple case of park the car up and leave it and have a nice time in the fantastic hospitality unit that McLaren have, but there's a huge amount going on behind the scenes. We're going to go down to the grid now, and Gemma is with Michael O'Brien, who we've seen in British GT over the years, and he's now partnering Thomas Sargent, who is P3 on the grid.
Mickey, the last time out in Spa, you had a fantastic battle. We watched a replay a little bit earlier on before the race started with the team, and it was incredible to see such close racing in this championship.
Yeah, it was a really good race. Unfortunately, we came out just on the other side. But yeah, it was an amazing, amazing battle between three cars. Obviously really showcasing how close everything is in the McLaren Trophy as well. So yeah, great race. It's always very enjoyable, very fair as well. So hopefully we'll go a couple better today.
Absolutely, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Yeah, just to pick up on the interview, that Michael O'Brien, very, very good that they spoke to him on the grid, because we were obviously at Spa watching this battle, and it was absolutely fantastic. Three guys fighting right to the end. Really good driving standards, no contact, but real hard racing. And this has been really a thing about this series, not just in the top class, but also in the 570S. We've seen some incredible battles. And you know, if it goes by the practice times, FP1, 2, and 3, we'll have the same again here at the Nürburgring.
We've got two classes, the 570S trophy and the Artura trophy, and pole position is the 68 car of Bob Trundle.
Well, this is Bobby's third class pole. Bobby sitting down here looking at the start line. It's a beautiful sight.
It is a beautiful sight, yeah. Got an eye of fantastic Arturas in front, so it's really exciting. But yeah, good lap and qualified, really looking forward to it.
Have a great race, Bobby. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you. Cheers, guys.
And that incredible story of Team BRIT helping drivers who have got disabilities get into motorsport across different platforms, and this really a very high-profile series for them to show their worth and to show at the front end of the championship too.
This is very true. They're not just here making the numbers. You know, they're actually competing and fighting very hard at the very front of the 570S series. It's really something to be admired, and they bring a lot of awareness to everybody about what can be done, and really fantastic to see them. Great lap by Bobby Trundle in qualifying, and obviously deservedly so on pole position.
12 cars entered in the Nürburgring race, and we expect to see a couple more cars as we move through the rest of our championship season. We've had our first round at Paul Ricard at the start of June, Spa-Francorchamps, as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, and here at the Nürburgring. We'll finish our year in Barcelona. And I'm quite sure we've got the warning lights on the second place car of Mohamed Al Khalifa there. Is he trying to tell the drivers behind perhaps that he's got an issue? There's no yellow flags from the marshals on the left-hand side. He may have just pressed the wrong button.
You're probably right. I'm hoping that that's what it is, and him not having an issue inside the car, but time will tell.
3 practice sessions, 2 yesterday, and then this morning's kind of almost a warm-up session to qualifying. They have a free practice session that blends in to the qualifying session, so that the AM drivers who are qualifying the cars have a car underneath them, and they're not trying to push on lap 1, which can always result in issues.
Yeah, I really like their format. Exactly what you said. It gives them sort of a warm-up before qualifying, and they feel a bit more tuned into the track. So that's a format that's been working really, really well. And yeah, that's no reason to change that.
Good news, all cars off the line then. So Mohammed Al Khalifa without an issue in that number 13 car on the front row of the grid. And I think the warning lights have gone off the car as well. So he's found the right button to press to turn them off. A first chance then to have a look at the surface of the road. Because, well, certainly from our point of view, 10 minutes ago it was raining. It is now, I suppose it's not sunny, but it's not raining. And these are all on slick tyres. So Mohammed Al Khalifa will start alongside DeAndres on the front row of the grid. Row 2 will be occupied by Thomas Sargent and then David Wadlington in the Inari Motorsports. First of the Greystones is on row 3 with Mark Hopton alongside Albert Jochims. Those are the Artura trophy cars. And then pole position for the 570S is Bobby Trunley. We just met him on the grid, and David Foster for One Motorsport alongside. And then one of the drivers that does not have a partner, Danny Henrey, will line up alongside Sean Penridge. And then at the back of the field, Rafa Martinez, who will share with Jem Hepworth. Which feels as though Rafa got a penalty as well to be dropped to the tail of the field there.
That's correct. You got a penalty there towards the back. I'm not sure exactly what the infringement was, but one of the other cars to watch out for in the beginning of the race is number 77, Mark Hopton. He was also suffered from a 3 grid penalty, so he should have been second. So from a pace point of view, if you want to look for a car that's going to hopefully be moving through the field, is number 77, Mark Hopton. So watch for the early laps on that one.
Yeah, Rafa Martinez with a 207.1, 10th position in qualifying, dropped to the back of the field. So lost only 1 position in qualifying and will start at the very back. Rafa Racing Club, you'll see that logo not just across this championship, but across various other SRO championships. So only his first race just a couple of races ago in Paul Ricard, and already putting huge amounts of effort into multiple series in European motorsport. Track looks good though, doesn't it? A bit of gravel on the exit there, but in terms of wet conditions, it doesn't look even greasy.
No, it's hard to tell from the monitor, but you can see just by the way that they are weaving the cars to get temperature on the tires and the brakes, that they're able to actually lean enough. So that means that, yeah, the grip level is pretty good. I think they need to watch out for the white lines and curves at the moment because of the shower that we had only a few moments ago. But it looks like a dry race, and frankly, from where we sit, I don't see any rain coming. But I'm sure people on the weather forecast will tell me differently.
It did come from our shoulders a lap ago. Windscreen wipers on the Team BRIT car, and we're hearing the cameramen are saying that there is rain falling from the sky. Gemma Scott confirming from pit lane that it is falling again, and it did fall enough at the end of the GT3 session to have a real effect on those last couple of laps. This is a massive challenge. Remember, these are AM drivers, some of them in their first or second year's worth of motorsport, and they are on slick tyres, and they are potentially facing wetter conditions. Windscreen wipers on for our pole man, Gonzalo de Andres on the right-hand side, Mohammed Al Khalifa on the left. All cars are now formed up, 11 starters. We're about to go racing for what should have been race 5 of the championship. Actually, race 4 in the end. 2 races this weekend, 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. Green flag at the back. We're ready to go racing for McLaren Trophy Europe. Race 1 on the Nürburgring. Not a very long hold at all. And a good reaction from our pole man. Gonzalo de Andres claims the inside line. Mohammed Al Khalifa loses that second position to Thomas Sargent. It was a poor start from Wadlington. And now they're just going to be super careful through turn 1. And it does look a bit greasy through there, especially on the newer tarmac on the inside. Everyone being very, very careful not to have too much contact. And I think they all got through there cleanly.
Very clean start there for everybody. I mean, really, as you say, very difficult for these guys, and they're not experienced racers, and they're showing the pros how to do it. It's, you know, all of them got through the first 2-3 corners.
There's Rafa Martinez at the back of the field, a little bit of a twitch from Penridge just in front. And you can see the amount of water on the track, on the surface, from the reflection from the lights of these cars. It does actually look a lot greasier, perhaps, than the colour of the tarmac suggests. And they've got cold-ish slick tyres here. They need to build the temperature into that rubber, so the rubber then adheses to the tarmac. And even if there's rain falling from the sky, if they've got temperature in those tyres, then they will work for the driver.
That's very true, Ben, and that's exactly what they need to do. Work those tyres as hard as they can and be careful not to lose control of it. And sometimes when you see the wipers going, it's not necessarily to wipe the rain, but it gives the driver a gauge as to how much water is actually coming down, which will give them an idea, you know, if the track is being affected by it.
The big loser in that first couple of corners was definitely David Wadlington in the Inari number 93. Started on the second row. He was the slow starter that we saw on the outside, and he's dropped, I think, down to at least into the mix of the 570S field. Yeah, 8th position, so absolute last position in the Artura class. And obviously his pace suggests he can do a lot better than that, so a frustrating start.
Still, I can't commend these guys enough. Very, very difficult conditions for anyone, even for pro drivers, and all cars still circulating. They're doing a great job.
As it gets greasier on the racing line, we just had an hour and a half of Pirelli rubber down on this circuit from the GT3 class cars. As the circuit gets slightly more slick, the grip will actually find itself on the outside. That's a huge dive down the inside. Oh, and a lose as well from the 77. So Hopton spins around. Al Khalifa had almost dive bombed to the inside, and I think he might have made that one work into second position. But shows how tricky it is. That downhill braking into turn one, it's a heavy braking zone. And if you just find yourself on a slightly creasier part of the circuit, then it's easy to lose the rear end.
Yeah, beginner's mistake there for Hopton. Unfortunately, he actually got his left side of the car onto the white lines and slightly maybe even on the curb. And of course, there's no grip there. So, but he needs to just get his head down and push forward. He's got the pace to get back up the front.
There is Al Khalifa up to second position with that move. For a moment, I felt he was going to go really deep into turn one, but managed to hold on to it. Nice and on the edge of the braking zone. Gets himself ahead of Surgeon. Here is a replay of that move then. Was it planned? And yes, absolutely, Hopton on the curb, and that's what spun that car around.
Yeah, so a little inexperience there showing from Mark. Unfortunately, he's a really, really good driver. He's learning the ropes really quickly, and he's got pace. But yeah, a few drops of rain early before the race. He should have known that the curbs and the white lines are not the place to go.
Hearing from race control that David Waddington was involved in an incident with the number 11 car, which is David Foster. Obviously not something that we saw, but may explain why Waddington is down there in 9th position. We definitely didn't have a great start, but it wasn't bad enough to drop him down to almost the tail of the field. Oh, here's a move down the inside. A recovering Hopton. Remember, we're not using the slow chicane here at the Nürburgring like you might see in Formula One, so it's not much of a braking zone into that chicane, but he has the inside line through the final turn and claims the apex to get ahead of the 570S leading car. I think, oh, so that was Jochim's, wasn't it, the 42, Jochim's. Yeah. Bobby Trundley up to 4th position in the leading 570S. They're doing a really good job.
Yeah, Sundry showing incredible pace there on the 570S, doing very, very well.
So that was Albert Jochim's losing 6th position to Hopton. Hopton back up to 5th after having a spin. Shows that he's got the pace. And with these mixed conditions, this is really where, if you've got the confidence, you can make massive inroads. It's not kind of tenths of a second a lap. It can be seconds a lap difference between. And if you look at the lap times between all of our drivers, there's massive differences here.
Yeah, it's quite not surprising to see. Obviously, as you say, in these conditions, very difficult to find where the grip level is. But these guys really need to keep it on the island. They need to obviously give these cars back to the pro counterparts in good condition. And of course, there will be some penalties which are carried on from last round into the pit stops, so they need to account for all of that.
Watching here, Mohamed Al Khalifa ahead of Thomas Surgeon. Khalifa getting past at turn one, that dive bomb down the inside, claimed the apex, claimed the track position, and the Nürburgring layout as we have here is not a particularly easy place to overtake. There's not mammoth amounts of big braking zones.
No, and obviously to complicate things even further, the track conditions are obviously not exactly ideal. So when these guys move off flying to overtake, they are on ground that's obviously less grippy. So you need to really be confident when you make a move.
But what Mohammed Al Khalifa proved is there is a margin in the braking zones into turn one. That was quite a bold move. He made it stick. He has second position. De Andres leads in the number 7 machine, comes over the line now. The gap to second position is 4.5 seconds, but it's very, very close between second and third. Then a gap to our leading 570S of Bobby Trunley, with Hopton on the recovery drive. Big gap between himself and Joachim's now in 6th position. And then the second of the 570Ss is that pink machine of David Foster, who's under investigation for contact with Waddington. And there is David Waddington in 9th position, with Henry just ahead of him.
So you can see on the screen, fastest lap for Hopton. So clearly he has the pace to get back up the front. He needs to just cool down a little bit and focus on road ahead, and just keep putting the laps in, and he'll pick them up. Interesting battle also for second place. Both Khalifa and Surgeon doing very similar lap times, so that's a good one to watch at the moment.
So Danny Henrey, the only driver to not have a partner to share with in our field today. Does that mean he gets slightly compromised and his pit stop has to be slightly longer?
No, it's the opposite. I mean, as an M entry, solo M entry, he actually gets 10 seconds less in the pits.
Ah, right.
And so will the Trundley car as well, number 68. That's an MM entry. So when they come in the pits, again, 10 seconds less stationary. So, yeah, they will get an advantage over the Pro-M combinations.
Oh, the Team BRIT car could find itself quite heady up in the field if it continues at the pace that it's going right now. Here's Thomas Surgeon in 3rd position, again staring at the tail of Mohammed Al Khalifa. Sunshine now on the back part of the circuit as they climb their way back up towards the Schumacher S's. As I say, that usually a heavy braking zone into a very fiddly tight chicane in many other series, but as we come here with SRO, they choose the kind of more endurance style flowing chicane, which I think is actually just as much of a challenge. You turn your nose up, Tommy.
No, I actually like it. I prefer the faster chicane. I don't like the tight one, frankly.
Yeah.
I think it's much more flowy when you go on the fast chicane. What I do like also about the Nürburgring is the fact that the track limits here is not such a huge issue. You know, it's okay, turn 17 where they're going just now on the exit there, you can do it, and turn 4 especially is track limits. But generally speaking, the gravel traps are very close to the edge of the track, which you know, it makes it impossible almost for the cars to put 4 wheels off. So I think maybe something for UK tracks to learn from.
And a very good lesson in discipline for these drivers to effectively have no margin for error. There is very few areas where you want to be running too far wide. You can see how wide the circuit is, though, in the what used to be called, I think, the Mercedes Arena. I'm not sure if it's still called the Mercedes Arena, but it is such a wide part of the circuit. It does offer different racing lines if you want to improvise and try and get past the guy in front.
Yeah, absolutely, it does, and I think also it creates lines, wet lines, for example, in the wet, where you can actually really get an advantage by staying off the dry line. But yeah, I've always enjoyed racing here. It's a great combination of corners here at the Nürburgring, and I'm glad that the series came here to visit it. And yeah, I mean, lap times are now looking like fully dry, really. So I don't think there's any compromise in speed at the moment.
Yeah, in qualifying, they're in only one car in the 159s. Everyone else within 2 minutes, and our leading car is at 2:01.9. And so in race trim, that is about right, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously, they, as you say, race trip, so they started the race with a full tank of fuel, and so that probably accounts for the slightly difference in lap times from qualifying.
No change here between Al Khalifa and Surgeon for the moment. 6 seconds now behind De Andres, who continues to lead, and will be handing that car over to Thomas Pintos, who we heard from on the grid. Charlie Hollings will take over from Mohammed Al Khalifa, and Michael O'Brien, who we heard on the grid, will take over from Thomas Surgent. Yes, that will change things once we get to the middle point of our race. Just 10-minute window to change from driver 1 to driver 2. So not a huge amount of flexibility in terms of strategy. And we will have the more professional drivers starting the race tomorrow and then handing over to the AM drivers.
That's right. The change tomorrow is that on race 2, the pros start the race, and the the pit window is between 10 and 20 minutes, and of course they will try and stretch the pro drivers towards the 20-minute mark if they can. But it's obviously the opposite here in race 1.
Having a look at Bobby Trundley, who has now dropped behind Hopton, but that's kind of what you would expect from the performance of the two cars. The 570F versus the Artura. In the hands of a pro driver, a couple of seconds difference.
Yeah, potentially even a little bit more depending on track that you are. But yes, it's enough of a gap, I suppose. Quite a difference in horsepower, obviously from 585 in the Artura to the 70S is, I can't remember now, but I think it's about 540. Yeah, the 570S trophy runs at about 540 horsepower. A little bit heavier though, at 1,430 kilos. Against a 1320 for the Artura. So, you know, on circuits where you can stretch out the straight line speed, like Spa and Paul Ricard, you know, up to 4 seconds, maybe a lap difference.
Now, what can Thomas Sargent do here about Mohammed Al Khalifa ahead of him? He needs to start thinking differently. He's been behind Mohammed for a couple of laps, and so that's when the leading driver gets a little bit comfortable with having a car behind you, and suddenly you just need to start improvising and surprising the driver ahead to try and find a way through.
Yeah, you can see that he's definitely putting the pressure on Khalifa, and on this lap, coming out of the last turn here onto the pit straight, Khalifa made a slight mistake, and obviously the pressure was on, he had to defend into turn 1. So Khalifa is very much on his mirrors. It's a great battle though. I mean, there's only 1/10, less than a tenth in fact, in difference in lap time between those two.
Mohammed sits in the middle of the road. It was here where he managed to get past earlier, and it's here again where he has got a very different line. Maybe that was just a mistake instead. Goes very deep, but it's a part of the circuit where that's okay to do that. He's made a slight error, he's gone a bit deep, but the circuit allows you to hold on. Can Sargent find a way through on the inside here? Not quite, because the circuit goes from left to right again. So, as I said yesterday, there's a much better drive from Sargent out of that complex, but he needs to be on the left-hand side of Mohammed. He's all over the road, but again, can't find a way through. The way that the circuit cambers as well kind of encourages you to turn in early and shuts the door on any attack from behind.
Yes, and of course, with them battling up, you can see 4th place now, Mark Hopton really catching up on that battle. This will be a very interesting three-way battle very, very soon.
Yeah, and that's what's going to really change things for Thomas Sargent. For the moment, he's just focusing on what he needs to do ahead, but as soon as you put yourself offline to make a dummy attack, or indeed an attack that doesn't work, you open the door to the 3rd car behind. So he needs to be really careful here not to lose a position. The other philosophy, I suppose, is let the Greystone GT car go through and then follow him through and then pass him afterwards.
Well, I mean, if you look at the lap times, Hopton is clearly a full second, maybe a bit more faster than these two guys at this stage in the race. So let's see how they plan there. But, you know, I don't think they are planning on backing off in any shape or form. They're busy doing their own battle. I think Hopton needs to be very careful coming across this, keep his cool, and find the right place to overtake.
Yeah, Mark Hopton was the fastest man on that last lap, including faster than our leading car. So the recovery drive continues for Mark Hopton, and he's really bringing himself into this battle very, very quickly. A little bit wide on exit of the final turn, just pushed a little bit through the second phase of that effectively double apex right-hander. But again, Mohammed Al Khalifa goes deep and kind of middle-ish defense, runs very wide, but it kind of covers off the apex to this corner, and it's certainly not the fastest way through that corner, but it kind of becomes a defense.
100%. I think you can see even soon after he exits the last corner onto the pit straight, he's moving the car towards the middle of the track to sort of, the body language says to Sargent, I know you're there, I'm defending the line into the first corner. Good run from Sargent there, potentially on the outside. Now,
oh, but he's got to go around the outside of the first part to have the inside to the second part of this particular section of turns. This is where he could go down the inside. Oh, Khalifa's opened the door for him. May well get a better drive, but it's open and it's through for Thomas Sargent. And it was more of a hassle than anything else, wasn't it? Hassled Mohammed Al Khalifa off the racing line. And then down to the hairpin. Now Khalifa has that challenge of a second person trying to get past him versus trying to keep with Thomas Sargent ahead, because he doesn't really want to let Sargent get too far ahead, knowing that Sargent probably has better pace than him. It's been a really good couple of defensive laps from Mohamed Al Khalifa, but it also fatigues you by driving like that.
Absolutely. I think this is incredible for Khalifa. It's great experience for him to be under that much pressure. I'm sure Charlie Holdings is watching with interest, and he'll be talking to Khalifa about how to, learn from this experience. But great driving from all of them, keeping the cars on there. I mean, it's, this is the thing about the series. How often do you hear that, yeah, but he has the best car, but on a one-make championship, it means they are racing identical cars, and when the race starts, only the driver makes a difference here. So it's great to watch the series, sort of proving what it's intended to do.
Now, this is where Mohamed Al Khalifa has a very different approach, and it has worked for him. Blue flags flying on the outside of the circuit. Not sure what was that is for. But Mohamed Al Khalifa has made moves down here before. He's later on the brakes into turn 1. And again, he is later on the brakes, closes in, but obviously not quite close enough to make the dive bomb that we saw earlier on in the race. And the track conditions probably don't quite allow the different level of braking zone that we saw on the early part of the laps, where perhaps people were being a little bit more careful than they are now. Oh, the Sargent's run very, very deep into the final part of the Mercedes S's. This could allow Mohamed Al Khalifa to have a better run out of this turn, as what happened to him 1 lap ago. Is there an overlap on the left-hand side? Oh gosh, Hopton thinks he might go down the inside. That's not a particularly good idea, and they all think better of it and fall into line astern. Al Khalifa then disappears out of the mirrors of Thomas Sargent ahead, and maybe inserts a little bit of doubt into the brain of the American ahead, but actually the gap widens.
This has worked out well for now anyway, for Sargent, obviously, with Khalifa having Mark Hopton in his mirrors. He's obviously distracted by that, so Sargent's got a little bit of a gap there. But I have to say thank you, race TV director there, for showing us this fantastic battle. And I'm sure the SMC car is not happy that their car leading the race is not there, but this is where the battle is, and it's great to watch.
I know, if you're too dominant, you don't get the TV time, do you? Oh, that's a very late move, onto the grass, over the curb. I think he might have even got away with it. Here comes Al Khalifa to go back round again, and Mark Hopton survives. May not have even collected that much grass, because it was well cut before this weekend, and I think he got away with that, but that was a very scary moment.
Yeah, again, Mark Hopton just losing his cool a little bit there. He needs to just, be a little bit more patient there and pick the right moment.
Interesting, he's already got a track limits warning at turn 17, so that'll be the end of the lap. I'm not sure he'll get a track limits warning for completely cutting a corner, because it wasn't exactly an advantage.
That's it, yeah. He obviously didn't gain the place, so no advantage gain on that one.
Try again, think of a different way to get past. It's not usual overtaking opportunity where he was kind of going for a move, or perhaps just getting caught out by the braking zone. Again, Al Khalifa missing the apex, but it seems to be okay in terms of momentum. Ultimately, not necessarily the fastest way through that turn, but you hold on to the position.
Yeah, so I think Khalifa is obviously on the defense line coming to turn 1. He's a little bit too far into the middle for my liking, really. I think he needs to understand from his mirrors a little bit better that whoever is behind him is not quite close enough to make a move. He could have taken a slightly better line, but it almost looks like he's not pressing the brake pedal hard enough. He's not retarding the speed enough to get the apex.
Another slightly late dive on the brakes, but leaning on the front end of the car. See, that kind of worked out. And that is 15. So that is Danny Henrey down in 9th position. That's the battle for 2nd in the 570S class. And it almost looked as though he carried on pushing the brake harder and harder and got the retardation done by the apex, but it initially looked like he was not maybe pushing it hard enough initially.
Yeah, it visually looked like a late lunge, didn't it?
Yeah.
He actually made it.
And that is one of the big things about driving a race car versus driving a road car. Braking and being aggressive with a brake is just not something you can do in a normal road car. But when it comes to racing conditions, stamping on the brake is basically what's needed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the time, most of the time, it's gain or losses under braking. So learning the technique, the correct technique to do that properly is one of the things that the pros are obviously passing through to their bronze drivers. Now this number 11 car obviously shared with Bradley Ellis. Bradley, very, very capable pro driver. Danny Henrey, opposite there, a solo entry in M. So when he comes in the pits, he'll gain 10 seconds advantage in the pits because it's an M entry, whereas the pro M car of number 11 ahead at the moment will have to be stationary for an extra 10 seconds, but then of course Bradley Ellis will have a little bit more pace than Danny when it comes.
Now pit window is open, with 29 minutes still remaining of the race. I think, no, open 30 to 20 minutes? Yeah, so I think it just opened.
Yes, normally we get a mention on the screen, don't we?
So, what do the drivers do now? In theory, if this was a GT4 or GT3 race, you would come in as quickly as possible to get your pro driver in for as long as possible in the race. For the AM entries, that doesn't matter quite so much. You can be a bit more flexible with it. But maybe the window didn't open. Yes, race control usually announce it, don't they?
That's right, yeah. So when they'll pit in, obviously they'll bias towards the driver that has the faster pace to be in the car, obviously longer. But obviously Danny will just have a little drink and go out again. But looking forward to the battle between Bradley Ellis. And don't forget Pendrich at the moment at the back of the field, but Pendrich hasn't quite done enough laps in free practice. He's struggling a little bit with pace, but his counterpart, Stuart White, is a very, very rapid driver, and we'll look forward to seeing him making places through the order towards the end of the race.
Just been corrected by the pit window opens 30 minutes into the race, and because the race is a 50-minute race, it will not open until a few moments' time. So it's not open yet. Which I suppose that actually then forces the AM driver to do the chunk of the work in this first race.
Absolutely. This is frankly what I love about this series. This series is very much biased towards the bronze driver. They come here and they get a lot of track time. And not just that, but they feel like they've really generally contributed towards the end result of a race. So yeah, this is ultimately, I think, the best Pro-Am series you've got in Europe for that matter.
Little bit messy from Jochems through the chicane there, and indeed Waddington behind, also very wide through the final turn. I'm wondering whether he picked up a bit of gravel, because it almost has looked as though Jochems was going to try down the inside of Bobby Trundley. Trundley was a bit late on the brakes, as was Jochems, and then Waddington found himself wide at the next turn. So a few things creeping in as we get into the second half of the stint for these guys. Mark Hopton here in the 77 still hasn't found a way past Mohamed Al Khalifa. Al Khalifa's done a very, very good defensive drive, kept Surgeon at bay for a long, long time. The gap only 5 seconds between Surgeon and Al Khalifa at this point now, and Hopton yet to find a way through.
Yeah, as always, a great job by Khalifa. He's a real steady competitor. He's a very consistent, and yeah, looking good here in front of Hopton at the moment.
Have a look at this replay. Second in class for the 570S. Oh, blimey. So Danny Henrey just going a little bit too deep, or a little bit too eager on the throttle, I should say, out of that final section of turns, down the hill, and then returning back up towards the back of the paddock, which takes you round to the end of the lap. And as we said earlier, many a racetrack, that would be just dipping your wheel over onto some tarmac, but not here.
No, it's something I really like about the Nürburgring. It's very hot topic, isn't it? Track limits these days, all over the place. And but I think Nürburgring has a really good balance here, where the gravel trap is so near the edge that there is absolutely no gain to run off the track, apart from a couple of corners here. But that's easier to police. So, like I said, I think specifically the UK could learn quite a bit from Nürburgring here.
So Gonzalo de Andres still leading, now 13 seconds to the good over Surgeon. Lap times are quite similar between the two of them. Al Khalifa about half a second slower on that last lap and is now 5.2 back with Mark Hopton, as you can see, on his tail, still not giving him a let up. Al Khalifa's going to be knackered after this one, having to drive so defensively and under so much attack through what has been such a long part of the race so far. And then there's a 22-second gap down to the leader in the 570S class, which is Bobby Trundley, who has also been pressured, but a different type of pressure, because ultimately he should be being passed by the Arturas, and he should know that that's okay, because his gap to the next best of the 570S class cars is absolutely mammoth. I think over 20 seconds. So, and that's David Foster, the little battle we saw just a few seconds ago. Danny Henrey, and then a big gap to Martinez in 10th position. Here is Bobby, say under pressure now. Oh, we've got contact. That's for second in the 570S class. David Foster and Danny Henrey, both off the circuit. One has already decided to park up right off the circuit, so very, very heads-up driving to get that car off the track, to not compromise the race for everybody else. But that's a disaster.
What a big shame. That was such a good battle. Obviously, I'm sure the TV will give us a replay very soon, see what happened.
And there, Bobby Trundley just allowing the two Arturas to go through. No need to fight them. And sensible driving from Bobby Trundley, just to get out of the way, really, knowing that these are faster cars. So there is David Foster out of the race. What a shame, from second in class. And what happened between the two of them?
Well, I'm not really sure what happened there into turn one, but it looks like they will have a coming together. No?
Not yet.
No.
So Henry's got ahead. Oh, blimey! Wow. Not sure Danny Henrey realised that David Foster was there. Comes off the... Ah, no, he's lost it on the wet curb. He's off the circuit, and he's on the slightly greasy kind of Grass Creek curb. And when he's come back onto the circuit, the car's slid into the side of David Foster, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was quite a hard hit as well. So I'm glad to see both guys are out of the car, all good. The cars actually look pretty good considering the impact. And I have a feeling I'm going to be busy in the driving standards officer later after the race. But yeah, very big shame for those two having such a good race.
Yeah, and it looked like a clean battle up to that point, didn't it? They'd already swapped positions through turn one, and through turn two they were side by side. Just feel as though perhaps getting on the throttle on a slightly greasier part of the circuit sent the two into each other.
Yeah.
It's going to promote Rafa Martinez onto the podium, and Sean Pendridge. So we'll just have three 570Ss left in the race, which means all will be on the podium regardless of, well, they need to finish, but where they finish, they'll all be on the podium.
And here's Khalifa and Hopton again, and it's still Khalifa ahead. They're doing a fantastic job. He's under tremendous pressure and still keeping his cool. And pit window coming up soon. I mean, in about a minute, just over a minute, so we'll be looking at pit stops.
Helmet on for Aaron Morgan, who'll be taking over from Bobby Trundley in the 68, the leading 570S. And really no pressure at all, to be honest, because there's such a massive gap to Rafa Martinez that he just needs to cruise home for that victory in 570S.
So here we're going to turn one. It looks like Hopton looking for a move. Defensive goes Khalifa. Now let's see if he makes the apex this time. A little bit wide again.
But it works for him.
He still maintains the position. He's got the track inside, so...
I mean, as I said, if you were going for ultimate lap time for a qualifying lap, it's not the best policy, but that has been the line throughout the race. We thought it might be a mistake, but it's a mistake every single of the 14 laps. So it's obviously a conscious effort and a conscious line to take, and it has kept him ahead for a long time of Thomas Surgeon, and it's keeping ahead of Mark Hopton.
Yeah, again, Khalifa doing a great job. Very good defensive driving, and but you have to say, Mark Hopton does have better pace. It's just finding a way around. You know, it's very easy driving a circuit on your own, but racing it in the racecraft, this is what these guys are learning. You know, getting past is an art that needs learning, and those two are doing that right now. Yeah,
and Khalifa is very direct, isn't he? He breaks into the apex of the turns to really shut off any opportunity from behind, meaning you have to get very creative to try and find a way through. There's our leader. And he is 11 seconds to the good of this battle. Sargent and Al Khalifa together. And we are now, window, oh, mistake from Mark Hopton. Was there contact? No, there wasn't contact. That was where he made a mistake earlier on, where he found himself on the grass on the inside. This time he goes wide on the outside, but it's obviously a little bit of a Achilles heel for him. As the pit window opens, we now see cars coming in. And Rafa Martinez, the first driver to pit, and he will be handing over to Jem Hepworth. Sean White will be getting into the 74 car, who is second in that queue, and then our leader. So looks as though everybody is just going to take advantage of pitting straight away.
Now, just a bit of information there for the Gonzalo and Pinto's car, obviously leading the race, but they will have an additional 7 seconds added to the pit time, which is obviously a success penalty from Spa. So that will eat into their lead. And obviously the 27 car of Sargent and O'Brien will get 3 seconds added.
Okay, so a 5-second disadvantage to the 7 car, but they had 12 before the pit stop. So as you say, it will close it down, but it won't be a massive difference. And it was one last attempt for Mark Hopton, wasn't it? Because he's now brought that car into the pits. Bobby Trundley continues. So 1 extra lap. Because they are an Am-Am partnership, they don't need to pit as soon as possible like everybody else. Drivers getting bolted in. Mechanics just checking tyre pressures, working out how different the tyre pressures are from the start of the race, how the tyres have reacted on each of the individual corners. And then we'll just tweak them to balance them back again if, for instance, the driver is reported understeer or oversteer. Although these AM drivers, you probably, they're not at that stage yet where you're fiddling around with micro bits of PSI to maximise performance. They're,
of course, not as sensitive as the pro guys, but they're beginning to learn that as well. And they've had now 3 races under the belt, and so they're beginning to learn the cars as well, and beginning to also get a feel for those things. So obviously now we get Mike O'Brien in the 27 car, and he'll be pushing very hard, and I think Pintos will have to really be at his very best to try and keep that 5-second advantage they probably will have. Let's see how it all pans out after a lap or two, but just watch for the O'Brien car. Michael, very, very quick guy. He'll be showing us some good pace, I'm sure.
Yeah, Michael, a British GT winner a couple of years ago for McLaren. Now we see the 15 car. Don't expect the driver to get out of this one because this is the car that is only piloted by Danny Henrey. And interestingly, this is the car that had that big contact with David Foster. We thought they were going to retire, but he obviously got back going again. And it doesn't look like there's a scratch on it on that left side.
I know, incredible. The car looks like it hasn't made a contact at all. But also, he will get an additional 7 seconds in this pit stop because, of course, Danny Henrey won the class at Spa in the race, so that's his success penalty. So he obviously had a bit of a contact with the other car, lost some time on track, and now another 7 seconds additional. So he'll be under pressure for the second part of the race.
Although 10 seconds less because he's a single driver entry. So lots of maths to be doing.
Very true.
Across all of the different cars, there's a bit of maths to be thinking of. So Thomas Pintos leads, Michael O'Brien is second, Charlie Hollings third, Ewan Hankey fourth. That's how it works out with our pro drivers now. And of course, they can fight really hard. A little bit of understeer from Ewan Hankey up through the Schumacher S there. But they need to be respectful of the fact that they need to bring these cars home for the gentleman drivers, the AM drivers that have done so well in the early part of the race. A reminder that Bobby Trundley, who is yet to pit, is still actually leading the race on the timing screens. But as soon as he comes in, he owes us a pit stop still. And as soon as he comes in, he will hand over that lead to Pintos. There is Trundley. And sensible to just let everybody else get through their pit stop cycle and have a free pit lane to then do his thing. Gap between Pintos and O'Brien, 6.8 seconds. So as the math suggested, basically, not much time lost and gained. And then another 6 seconds to Hollings, who is just 1.4 ahead of Ewan Hankey. That's how it plays out after the pit stops, after the success penalties that the drivers have had. And of course, in terms of the gaps between all these pro drivers, there'll be much less gaps in performance versus the AMs.
Very much so. It'll be very interesting to watch the lap times between Pintos and O'Brien. See if O'Brien can eke out a little advantage lap by lap, because 5-6 seconds, there's still nearly 15 minutes of racing to go. It could happen. I mean, if Michael puts some good laps in, it'll get close to Thomas. But Thomas is no slouch. He's a quick guy, and he knows that difference, the gap. While they get around and things get aligned after the driver changes, just a quick mention for car 53, who's not here with us, couldn't be here, is Neil Landberg and Ross Kaiser. And sadly not here this weekend. It's Neil's 70th birthday.
Ah, happy birthday.
So happy birthday to Neil. Great competitor. He's a Native American, and if you follow the series, you may have noticed on his car, Race for RP, which is relapsing polychondritis. Now that's a mouthful, but it's a really great cause, and it's a rare autoimmune disease that attacks the cartilage in your body, and they're trying to raise awareness for that, but more importantly raise support for this great cause. So if you guys want to go online and look for Race for RP, that's car number 53, Neil Landberg and Ross Kaiser, who are not here. We're missing them a lot, but hopefully we'll see them in Hockenheim. And so big mention for them. Happy birthday to Neil.
Always a bit tricky running a race during school holidays for the AM drivers, because then there's a discussion on holiday or racing. And I wonder if we were racing maybe a week ago in Portimao, perhaps holiday could have been chosen, but there's not a huge amount of holiday destinations around the Nürburgring. Danny Henrey's been off the road again. That's the second time. This time he's off at the final turn. Not many people visit that particular barrier.
No, something must have happened, obviously, out of the chicane there, and he went wide. But I wonder if that's a result of the earlier contact with car 11. Maybe something happened there with the car. There's a replay coming up next.
So through the chicane and off on the left-hand side. And
you know, that's very odd. He actually made slight contact with the barrier there, but that wouldn't have damaged the car. But that's a very odd place for him to be coming off, which suggests that perhaps he has a bit of an issue from the earlier contact.
The fact there's no body contact and no body damage suggests it was wheel-to-wheel earlier on, and wheel-to-wheel would certainly damage some kind of tracking. Quite sensitive when you do wheel-to-wheel contact, because it's a lot of fixed parts.
I mean, it was a very heavy contact, so I'm surprised it carried on. And the car is obviously, by and large, still okay, but he may be suffering from the effects of that.
Ewan Hankey versus Charlie Hollings. A bit of a twitch from Charlie Hollings in the number 13. The lead of these two cars in 4th position right now will become 3rd position. So last point on the podium to be fighting for, as Team BRIT now come in. And Bobby Trundley brings that car. Great stint from Bobby Trundley. And now a great way to look at how to get these two drivers in and out. So legs go in first. And it almost lifts himself into the bucket seat. And this helps to reposition. Presumably also has hand controls on the steering wheel.
I'm assuming so. I haven't actually looked at it, but it's amazing, that these guys have that deficit, if you will, in terms of pit stop. But he's able to obviously get himself in there quickly enough, and he's got some pace too. This guy can drive a car.
Only going to have about 10 minutes by the time he gets out the pits today in this race, but he'll have the longest stint tomorrow to enjoy.
Yeah, so roles reversed tomorrow. Obviously, pro drivers start and then AMs at the end. But for these guys, it really doesn't matter. Great work by the team there. Good teamwork there. Very quick.
Ewan Hankey down the inside. That's an unusual place to find a way through, especially pro to pro. But Hankey's got ahead of Charlie Hollings for what is 3rd position now. Just caught the end of that, and the pace of Ewan Hankey does look very strong. And we've seen a couple of times when following this battle that Charlie Hollings' car looks a little bit twitchy. And of course these cars are compromised in the way that they are set up to be comfortable for the AM drivers, so that the AMs can drive them as best as possible. Good job, Bobby. He's worked hard. He's worked very, very hard. And found himself right in the thick of things in the Artura trophy as well, considering he was in a 570S. That was good work done. But maybe Charlie Hollings not finding as comfort in that number 13 machine as Ewan has in the Greystone GT run machine just ahead.
Yeah, both Ewan and Charlie, great drivers. They are very capable. But Charlie suffering perhaps a little bit more through a bit of lack of track time here, really. No, but Hankey's always been very, very quick in these cars.
Here is the leader, Spaniard Thomas Pintos for SMC Motorsport. The car has led from the very beginning. And now we wait for the battle for second. Oh, it's not actually a battle for second, is it? Because it's Michael O'Brien on his own in second position, just getting past a back marker of Sean White. And O'Brien then 4.6 back from Thomas Pintos. Then it's Ewan Hankey, who has now already established nearly a 2-second advantage over Charlie Hollings in the 77. And O'Brien obviously probably has a little bit more pace than the lap time suggests, just because he caught Sean White just at the end of the lap there. We've had to follow perhaps Sean through 1 or 2 corners. And so it'll be interesting to see, with just 8.5 minutes remaining, whether Michael O'Brien can close down Thomas Pintos. 4.6 the gap. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think the lap times are not quite good enough on O'Brien's side to make up that gap, but we'll see. We'll see how the laps develop. Yeah, 2 minutes 3 against 2 minutes 4, so a little bit of a gap there, 4.5 seconds.
Now, when the pro drivers start the races, they are very conscious about handing over a good car to the AM competitors in the second half of the race. I imagine that the ability to do that from the AM drivers to the pro is less so. And so for a car that's been worked very hard, as we saw, for instance, Mohamed Al Khalifa having to work the car very, very hard, perhaps Charlie Hollings doesn't quite have the vehicle he wants underneath his feet.
That could well be the case. It's a good point, actually, because Khalifa was under a lot of pressure, wasn't he? So he was having to defend, and we saw a few times that he actually missed his apex into turn 1. So I'm sure he was trying to push that brake pedal as hard as he could. But yeah, I think perhaps a combination of I was talking to Charlie actually earlier in the paddock. He mentioned that, of course, they have to bias most of the running through free practice to the AM drivers, to the bronze drivers. So in fact, the pro drivers do get very little seat time. And even at this level, you do need a bit of seat time to get back onto the circuit again. But Charlie perhaps not quite having done as many laps as some of the other pro drivers this weekend.
Here in the 93 car has an 11.2 second penalty for a short pit stop. So that was the exchange between David Waddington and Adam Wilcox. Wilcox now aboard that car in 5th position. He is going to drop behind Charles Voltzmann for 6th with that penalty. Here's South African Stuart White in 9th spot. 3rd position in the 570S battle. Danny Henrey still out there and is still circulating, but quite a way off now after 2 excursions.
Yeah, not surprisingly, Stuart White now the fastest 570S car on track at 2040. And sorry, I'm just looking at 2045 there. So he's clearly got the speed against the other 570S. Unfortunately, we're not going to see Bradley Ellis because the car retired. That's a big shame. Bradley is a very capable driver. We saw a fantastic battle between White and Ellis at Spa. There was really, really something to watch. So sadly, we're not going to see that today, but hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to witness that.
Battle on track for 5th position. Wilcox versus Schwartzman. Wilcox with that penalty hanging over him. So whether the team tells Schwartzman there's no real need to fight here because you are going to end up inheriting this position anyway. It's not as though he can really close in on the battle ahead, because Charlie Hollings in 4th is half a minute up the road. I mean, just 5.5 minutes remaining. That's an impossibility, really. But they were pretty close going into turn 1.
Yes. Good close racing. Nice to see.
So Pintos versus O'Brien has come down to 3.4 seconds. I'm sure it was nearly 6 when we last checked in with that gap. And so O'Brien is absolutely not giving up here for the lead of the race. It's not close enough yet to come and have a look. Oh, there he is, there's Pintos. And the gap down to 3.3. O'Brien, fastest lap of the race on that last lap, a 1:59.7.
Yes, you have to say that O'Brien has been consistently quicker over the last 2 or 3 laps. There's about a half second difference just there on that particular lap. I mean, 3.5 seconds. All it takes is 2 bad laps from Pintos, and he'll be right up there.
course, the closer you feel or hear or see that the rival is coming at you, the more mistakes start to creep in, the pressure starts to build. I think with 4.5 minutes remaining now, Pintos probably has enough laps in favour to hold on. There's one thing catching, there's another thing passing.
Michael is a real racer. He can see the car in front of him, and he's chasing him, absolutely chasing him now.
Fastest lap of the race, as I say, 1:59.75 from Michael O'Brien. Plays at 2:0 minutes .1 from Pintos on that last lap, so it was only 0.4 of a second taken away on that last lap, but 0.8 of a second in sector 1 alone from Michael O'Brien.
You can see O'Brien there tailing the car out of turn 8. He's giving it everything now, and the gap is closing. Will he have enough time to catch him?
How many settings will be changed between AM and Pro driver when they come into the pit stops? Is there traction control and things like that to turn off?
They can do a certain amount of change on that, but I suspect they'll race the car that's pretty much the same between the two of them. Maybe a slight click here and there. Less, I suppose, for the pros. But then again, they're inheriting the cars. Obviously, if they go second in the race, with tyres are worn down now, so it may be that they may even click it up again, but just to look after the tyre.
And do you find pro drivers like a different brake bias to an AM as well?
I think that is certainly something that changes or can change from driver to driver. They'll like to obviously coach their AM drivers to be on the same setting, because then they'll be applying the right technique.
2.1 now, the gap between Pintos and O'Brien. 3 minutes and 10 seconds remaining, so that is 2 laps remaining of this race. 2.1 seconds. 1 second effectively taken out on that last lap. This is going to be really close between these two. It is going to be very, very tasty on the last lap between Pintos and O'Brien for the win in this race. And they are now in the same camera shot. And that just urges you on. O'Brien can see what's going on with the guy in front. Pintos can see in the mirrors as well what's going on from behind, although he'll just be desperately trying not to look at them.
You can see just by the amount of track usage that Michael is using in this car against Pintos. Pintos is actually quite contained at the moment. He's not pushing where you can see there. O'Brien just going slightly wider on the braking and using every bit of track that he can. So different body language there from the two cars. I think Pintos is experienced enough to know that he needs to just maintain a good steady pace, and he should be able to get it to the end.
The reminder that this was Gonzalo de Andres in the first stint and Thomas Sargent in the 27 car in the first stint. And that pass on Mohamed Al Khalifa, so vital to set Michael O'Brien up to be in this kind of position now, within shooting distance. It's taken half a second again in the first sector alone. It's just shy of a minute sector, the first sector of the lap here. Pretty much equal in the second sector, and the last sector very short, actually. That's a mistake.
Yeah, just very wide there coming out of the chicane for O'Brien, but he's just pushing very, very hard, obviously, and he's actually still making up time on Pintos. So it's going to be a very tense last few corners for Pintos. He needs to keep his cool, and so far, okay, but all it takes is one slight mistake.
Another 0.8 of a second gained from O'Brien on that last lap, but we are now on the last lap of the race. 1 minute on the clock, not enough time to complete the lap then. So Pintos may well hold on here. There's not really an overtaking opportunity in the last sector of the lap unless you're incredibly aggressive, unless you can distract and intimidate your rival off the circuit.
Yeah, there's no opportunity here. I mean, he needed to be closer to that, to Pintos for a run maybe up to turn 8 at the hairpin at the bottom of the hill, but he's not. So I think that will be definitely a dangerous lunge. And next opportunity to be into the chicane, but it's just not quite close enough, I don't think.
Can be an opportunity to overtake if you're very close down at this particular point of the circuit. But O'Brien nowhere near close enough. He has taken another half a second out of Pintos in that first sector, where he's obviously a lot stronger, much more direct through the Schumacher S's at the top of the hill. But then really from here on in, there's no way to overtake. So it's going to be very close at the line, and it's going to be a bit frustrating for O'Brien to be that close, but to stay in second position. Couple more challenges remain though. It's not an easy section, the last couple of corners. Pintos needs to keep his focus. Fast flick right-hander. That's completely flat out. Not too much of a challenge, but these last couple of corners really require precision. Over the curb on the left, over the curb on the right-hand side, and then through this final turn. O'Brien uses the curb on the exit, but there isn't quite enough laps. How frustrating for O'Brien, but how elating for Thomas Pintos, who takes the victory in race 1 here at the Nürburgring for Gonzalo de Andres and Pintos. O'Brien in second, 0.4 of a second by the end. And there is Rafa Martinez just losing a lap to Ewan Hankey. To Charlie Hollings. Ewan Hankey a bit further up the road, and Hankey's going to take the flag for third position. Yes, he does, as we check in with Hollings to come over the line for fourth. And the battle for second in 570S goes the way of Jem Hepworth and Rafa Martinez. And here is the winner then. Aaron Morgan cruising to the flag. He didn't need to push at all because all the work was done so well by Bobby Trundley at the start of the race. Actually, Morgan's got about half a lap to go, hasn't he? Such is his advantage over Hepworth and Sean White, all established by Bobby over those first half an hour.
Yeah, great job by Team BRIT there, coming away with a win. Fantastic result for them. And Pintos as well, didn't crack under pressure, kept the laps coming through, and yeah, a good win for the SMC car.
Oh, one more lap though. One more lap was all it needed for O'Brien.
Yeah, O'Brien did a fantastic job, just as you say, just ran out of laps at the end there, but a great performance by the O'Brien car, and yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. There'll be much of the same. Great battle throughout the field, and shame about car 11 that didn't finish with the contact, but yeah, another superb showing from the AMs as well at the beginning of the race when the conditions were very difficult. So yeah, hats off to them and to their coaches for you know, giving them the right tools to do it.
In 570S then, coming round the final turn, the final car to complete our first race here at the Nürburgring for Team BRIT. Aaron Morgan brings the McLaren around the final turn and takes victory in the 570S class. Just 10 minutes in the car to finish off this race. All the work tomorrow will need to be done. And a massive pat on the back to Bobby Trundley, who did such a sterling job in the first part of the race to carry that car in the midst of the Artura battle when it was very dodgy conditions on those first couple of laps. Actually, credit to the whole grid for keeping all the cars facing the right direction in what was a very tricky first 3 laps. And again, a very clean race. Just that one bit of contact that we saw anyway from Danny Henrey. And I think my adjudication of that was he was a little bit out of control.
Yeah, it looked that way, doesn't it? I'm always up for looking at all camera angles. And I think the driving standards office has taught me that. So I'll wait judgment on that one until I see everything.
SMC Motorsport take victory with DeAndres and Pintos, just 0.4 of a second ahead of Race Labs, Sargent and O'Brien. And then Ewan Hankey claiming third position for Greystone GT over Charlie Hollings in that second part of the race, with Mohamed Al Khalifa's car dropping to fourth by the end. Joachim de Jonchman in fifth, Waddington and Wilcock in sixth, and then Bobby Trundley and Morgan, the best of the 570Ss for Team BRIT. Then the 2 Greystone GTs of Martinez Hepworth and Pendridge, Sean White, with just one other car finishing. The Danny Henrey machine did finish 1 lap down, just the one retirement from David Foster. Yeah, and I imagine that probably was just a bent steering arm from David Foster, wheel-to-wheel contact.
Yeah, it's a shame really, because when he went off after the chicane here, that was an unusual way to go off the track. So we can only assume that he sustained some damage from that initial contact.
Just waiting. Thomas Pintos building the suspense. The Spaniard.
Great lap for Michael O'Brien, by the way, at the end there, with a 59.5, you know, on what was obviously old tyres at the end of the race. Clearly more than half a second faster than the next fastest lap. And he's up against obviously all the pros in the other car. So yeah, big congrats there to Michael O'Brien for such a good ending of the race, and a very impressive lap time at the end there to get fastest lap.
SMC Motorsport taking the victory. Thomas Pintos celebrating with his teammate. And there was the pursuer. Michael O'Brien did his very best, but just could not quite get there at the end. How much pressure did Thomas Pintos feel by the end of the race? Let's find out. Gemma Scott is down in the pit lane.
Tommy, we're just letting you get your helmet off there, your teammate with you as well. That was a fantastic drive. You had so much pressure on you in the closing laps.
Well, it was very good. Gonzalo did an amazing job in the first stint. He got the gap and everything, so I was trying to get no errors, going fast, and try to maintain the gap that we get off the pits. It was very good work for the team in the driver change and everything. We're fast, so I think it was very good. I drive, I think, very well in my stint, trying not to get every error. And just thanks for all the people that is in the project and everything. Thank you so much for this, and thank you for Gonzalo for all the work that we are doing together.
Absolutely, Gonzalo, you love that pole position, but you've got to love the win more.
Yes, it's a perfect race. Starting the pole position in the first stint, stay in the first position. I try don't push very hard from stint of Tommy, and the final of race is perfect, and the result is perfect.
Congratulations to both of you. Well done. Great result.
Thank you very much.
Let's not forget how tricky conditions were in those first couple of laps. For the AM drivers, for Gonzalo to deal with rain falling on the first 2 laps, but with slick tyres on. That really was an absolute tour de force, really, the first couple of laps. We're going to have a now check-in with the winners in the 570S class, and it really was an amazing opening stint from Bobby Trundley. He's with Gemma.
Bobby, just a quick word from you there. That was a fantastic result. I mean, you set up everything for Aaron to bring that home.
Yeah, I mean, the guys have obviously done a fantastic job with the car and everything. You know, the race start went perfectly. Just stuck it around the outside, just trying to keep out of trouble, which worked out. I mean, wasn't expecting to be 4th overall with all the mixing it with the Arturas, but it was great fun. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, Aaron brought the car home. It was a fantastic result. Finally, after all of our bad luck, we finally got a result that we've been waiting for. So. That's great.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's certainly something to celebrate. Aaron just getting his helmet off there. We'll perhaps grab a word with him afterwards, but congratulations to you. Well done, Bobby.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and the first victory for Team BRIT in this series. First victory also, or top step of the podium, for Thomas and Gonzalo. But really, Bobby Trunley's opening stint, he did the majority of the work with Aaron just 10 minutes of the race to go. And he really did find himself right in the mix of things. And when you're carried by those faster cars, you almost get drawn away from the guys who are a bit slower behind.
Yes, absolutely. I think Gemma's got the other driver from the Team BRIT car.
Yep.
Aaron, a fantastic performance for you, bringing it home at the end and pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah, always pushing. So the motto of Team BRIT, we never stand on our laurels. We're always looking to move forward and always looking to go better as well.
And impressive watching your pit stop as well, how swiftly you're in and out of that car. I mean,
it's quite easy getting in. Gravity's on my side, so I just kind of fall in a little bit. But just so grateful to everyone within Team BRIT, all our sponsors, in particular CDW, for all of their support.
Congratulations, thank you, well done.
Thank you very much.
Let's have a look at the highlights of the first race here from the McLaren Trophy Europe, and it was a very good start in mixed conditions from Gonzalo Dandris to claim the first corner, with Mohamed Al Khalifa looking to try and get second position. It was David Waddington who found himself dropping into the middle of the pack and a little bit of contact in the first turn. And with that, put the Team BRIT 570S right into the thick of the Artura battle. And that helped Bobby Trundley with a really good result. This was a mistake from Mark Hopton, just dipping a wheel onto the greasy curb that spun the car around. At the same time, Mohamed Al Khalifa found himself in second position, dive bombing the inside. Eventually though, Thomas Sargent found his way past Mohamed Al Khalifa. It took about 6 or 7 laps and perhaps one lap too long for what we ended up seeing at the end of the race. Mark Hopton, though, had to try and really improvise to try and get through. This one didn't work. Contact between two of our 570S cars at the back of the field. A curious run from Danny Henrey, finding himself into the side of David Foster and eliminating that car. Came into the pits with not very much damage, really. But in the second half of the race, we had Michael O'Brien pursuing Thomas Pintos, and that was the gap through the final turn. It wasn't quite enough. One more lap needed for O'Brien to take victory. Instead, it was Pintos and De Andreas who took the victory in race 1 here at the Nürburgring. And look at that, the skies are almost sunny-ish. Can you believe it? It's supposed to be thunderstorms this afternoon here at the Nürburgring. It hasn't supposed to have been like this at all, but so far, they had themselves a clean, dry race. They were hoping for one, and the boys got one.
Absolutely, but it could have so easily gone the other way with the weather here. You never know what happens, but yeah, big congrats to SMC and the Thomas Pintos and the Andres car. I mean, we didn't mention much of them in the race because quite rightly the TVs were showing the battles throughout the race, but they do such a great job at every race meeting. They look fantastic. That Golf livery McLaren looks absolutely stunning, and you know, they're just really nice people, the whole team. So congratulations to SMC for a fine win.
Race Zone GT on the third step of the podium, a car that we have seen taking victory in the past. And in our 4 races that we've had in the McLaren Trophy this year, we have had 4 different victors. It shows the actual competitiveness of the series. But it's Thomas Pintos and Gonzalo de Andres from Spain on the top step of the podium.
Just enough time for a selfie.
Very international podium as well. The Spanish flag flying over the SMC Motorsport machine. Race Lab with the American flag over the top of Thomas Sargent. And then the British flag for Mark Hopton and Ewan Hankey receiving their trophies. And the trophies handed out to the third place drivers. The other ones are desperate to get that champagne opened. Because actually, despite the fact that it is kind of mixed weather conditions, 20 degrees outside, it would have been hard work in those cars. Trophies for Sargent and O'Brien. They'll be looking tomorrow to try and make amends. But the winners, Gonzalo de Andres and Thomas Pintos, very, very happy indeed. They're going to enjoy their celebrations. They reset tomorrow. They have a free practice into qualifying, and they race again tomorrow lunchtime. Make sure you join us for that. The celebrations on the podium here at the Nürburgring will continue late into the evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Tommy, thank you for joining us in the comms box. I hope it's not too late in the evening to assess all the action on track. Join us again tomorrow. Bye for now.